again, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this fifth session of the learning series around the EU regulation on deforestation-free products. Thank you very much for joining us today. The focus of this session is on smallholders, who are some of the most marginalized sectors in the global supply chains. We have done already 4 sessions. In the invitation that you received, you find the link to the recordings and resources to the previous sessions. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or my colleague, Alexandra. So my name is Greta. I'm a Program Coordination Associate Officer at the UN Development Program, Food and Agriculture Commodity Systems team. I invite you to introduce yourself in the chat as well. The learning series is organized through our community of practice, and thanks to our partners, Solidaridad. Some technical aspects, just to get started. The workshop is recorded. The recording will be shared with all of you together with the presentations and the resources after the workshop, so don't worry about that. We will have also a Spanish interpretation. My colleague Alexandra will be posting interpretation instructions in the chat now. Feel free anytime to put your questions and comments in the chat. We will try to respond or comment on that as much as possible. So the learning series is a space for you all to bring concerns or on the implementation of the regulation, as well as share practical examples to show what is already available out there for the implementation of the regulation. Good. And so let me just share briefly the agenda of today. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. Good. So today we will start with framing of the topic of our workshop. Then there will be a very interesting panel discussion where we will host voices from of smallholders, the private sector, and also government representatives. We will then have a moderated exchange where I invite you all to contribute with your questions, comments, or sharing just other experiences from your context, from your work. And then we will close wrapping up and with a short survey. Good. So I'll stop here, and now I will pass the floor to my colleague Friedrich, head of the policy unit in Solidaridad. Friedrich, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Greta. And if you guys can share the screen and the first slide of my presentation, then we can start. It's amazing to see how many participants are in this meeting, 112. So welcome, everybody. And thank you very much, UNDP, for the FACS, for the opportunity for me to talk a little bit more about an important strategic project that we just launched the final deliverable on. So if you go to the next slide, we can actually, I will actually tell you what this strategic project entails. And we'll do that also by introducing Solidaridad. Solidaridad is a not-for-profit, non-profit organization that supports smallholder farmers, improving their livelihood across all the world, actually. And our second mission is to make supply chains in agriculture sustainable. And we've been doing that now for 54 years, and that's quite some time. And we progressed through different phases, from the roundtables that we supported to set up, to the certification schemes like fair trade that we introduced, but also our plea for mandatory policies, our policy influencing that we do, the relations that we have with a lot of corporates with whom we work in public-private partnerships, always together in introducing solutions for farmers that create change that matter. We work in 52 countries with 1,100 staff members. It's quite a big organization. And we have a budget in 23 of about 70 million euros. So then you know a little bit about what we're doing and the size that we're operating on. And during these last 50 years, we tried to bring solutions to farmers, of course, and we succeeded. But we were always keen whether these solutions would really actually work for farmers. And sometimes, you know, we did not achieve the result that we wanted to see. For example, with a certification scheme like fair trade, the question was sometimes raised, would farmers really benefit from a fair trade scheme? And I think that's why we start interviewing our farmers in the field to get their perspective on how sustainability would work for them. Now, in the next slide, you will see actually two things. It's a bit challenging. What I'm going to ask you, it's a poll that we will put on, please. And the question in this poll is just to get your idea about it. Will the introduction of the EUDR, will it be tending to cause harm to farmers, small farmers, or will it be beneficial? So if you can fill in this poll for yourself, will small farmers benefit from EUDR? You can click on select an answer, and you will see 4 answers, yes, no, and some other answers that you might want to give. And please do that now, because I'm really keen to see what you think about this. I will do it also myself. And I have submitted just my answer. So if you can come in with the outcomes, I think we can do that, because it was not too difficult. I think it's I like this. It's a very close battle or race between yes and no, and that means that opinions really differ. I also like the answers nobody will benefit. It's a very honest answer. I like that. And there are some of you who think that who have the opinion that only the large companies will benefit. But the interesting thing is that a lot of you say yes, and a lot of you say no. So actually, it's a bit unclear, and the opinions are really different. Now, if we go to the next slide, we can dive a little bit into perhaps how that will work out for farmers, because Solidaridad is actually supporting the EUDR. Like I explained to you in the past, we introduced some voluntary sustainability mechanisms like fair trade, and we helped Food Certified and Max Havelaar, and the OK Bananas we launched. So we always try to work on with companies in improving the whole situation. But we come to the conclusion during the last 5 years that at a certain moment you need to introduce mandatory policies also to create a level of playing field. But will this level of playing field work for all of us? And our concern is, of course, will it work for the smallholders? And we do see, we do see some challenges that we really have to think about, because the smallholders, can they meet those requirements? And if they don't meet the requirements of EUDR, will they lose access to the EU market? And that's not something that we want, I think. But also, even when they meet the requirements, it's quite a hassle to connect them to the systems that are put in place now to actually provide the evidence. So, companies might stop buying from smallholders or look for more organized groups of smallholders, leaving those smallholders that are less organized behind. And that is something that we should really think through how to do that. That also will that has its consequences, of course, about supply security when those things happen. Now, the other thing is that we're concerned about is that the smallholders must take the cost of complying to these EUDR guidelines. There are a lot of things that needs to be arranged. The whole infrastructure need to be built. And that means that smallholders must take the cost. And often, as you know, as most of you know, smallholders do not have deep pockets. So that might be a challenge for the smallholders that we're looking at. Yeah, and the fourth one is more a technical one. It requires a lot of infrastructure in terms of technology. And the question is whether those smallholders can connect to that technology. And if they can connect to it, can they work with that technology? Yeah? So we really need to make sure that the technology is accessible. It is fair in the way that it is also working for them. And actually, what we love to see is that when farmers share their data that is needed for the traceability of their produce, that they actually benefit from it. Eh? That they don't take only the cost, but they benefit from it. For us, that's important. And I think we really have to look at those challenges because, the dependency of smallholders on smallholders is actually high. And that's the second poll I would like to launch. And if you can put that on the screen, that's about, I believe it's a question about coffee, just to test your knowledge about that. What is the small farmer share in coffee production? So now you can prove whether you really understand this group of smallholders by clicking on select answer and then fill in the right one. How much is it? I will do it myself. How much is the small farmer share in the coffee production? Yeah. Well, most of you have the good answer. That's very encouraging. And some of you really believe it's a lot. 90% is quite a lot. But the good answer is 70%. And if you go to the next slide, I will give you an overview of the importance of smallholders in the supply chains that we investigated. And here you see that there are quite some differences. There are also some question marks. For bananas, it was very difficult to have a good estimate on that one. And the same is actually on the buyer's end for the soybean, because it's quite diverse supply chain. But here you see on the right top, you see 70% of coffee production is actually being produced by small farmers in the field. And for cocoa, it's even more. And for cotton, it's also even more. It's really a crop where smallholders play an important role. Palm oil, you have the estates, of course, so that's a little bit less. But for tea, also 70%. So the overall picture should tell you actually that for producing our food, we are heavily depending on the production of a small farmer. Yes, and of course you can ask yourself, what is the definition of a small farmer? There's a definition that is depending on size, let's say 2 hectares or 5 hectares. But here we specifically looked at local definitions of small farmers, because a small farmer in Brazil is totally different than a small farmer in Africa. So we merely looked at local definitions, but also at the income potential. So we also looked at behind or below a certain level of income, we defined it as a small farm, and above a certain level of income, we defined it is a bigger farmer. But I think it's a very relevant question: what is a small farm? But we can say, I think, on average, that this is an important conclusion. We are depending on the production of small farmers. If we go to the next slide, please. So what did we do? you see here the globe and the yellow countries. So in those yellow countries, we investigated, or we asked actually small farmers, small-scale farmers, for their opinion on three important outcome areas. Now, outcome areas refers to our theory of change. And when we want to achieve impact, Solidaridad looks at three outcome areas, which is prosperity. To say it's about how much does a farmer earn or income potential. Then the second one is inclusivity. And that's not only about gender, but it's specifically about connection to markets. Is service provision inclusive? That kind of questions we asked. And a third outcome area is the balance with nature. As you know, in agriculture, farmers heavily depend on nature. Nature should work for agriculture, but also in return, agriculture should be organized that it also works for nature. So that's the balance that we're looking at. And topics like access to water, access to or the quality of the soil, the dependency on climate change shocks, the ability to meet those shocks, to manage those shocks. Those were questions that we asked. And we did that for 8 commodities. We did that with 10,000 small-scale farmers. I mean, I think that's unique. And we did that in 18 different countries. So you can actually say it's quite an exercise that we did. It took us, well, about 3-4 months to collect all the data. And then again, another 2-3 months to analyze all that data and to seek for any kind of correlations, conclusions, etc., etc. But it gave us a real good insights on what farmers actually want and what they need. Now, the big question, of course, is about the outcomes. So the third poll that I would like to put on the screen, actually, is the question, you know, what is the major concern? What is the major concern of a small-scale farmer? Yeah, because we read a lot of stuff, guys, and we think that we really know it. And also us as an organization, we think that we know. But why don't ask the small farmer? So if you click on select answer, you get a couple of topics. Really curious what you think is on top of mind of those small-scale farmers. And I'm not talking about that it was not clear. It came out very clear in this survey that we did. So is it access to finance? It's a huge issue, of course. The effects of EUDR that we talk about, is that a major concern? Is it the resilience to climate change shocks, that they can't cope with climate change shocks, the difficulty to actually adapt to it? Or is it the lack of access to internet that really hinders them to connect to markets? So what do you think this is? And maybe I will submit it now. So I hope, one moment, I will submit it now. Okay, yeah, I submitted it. So what's the outcome? I'm really curious. Yeah, it's interesting. This is interesting. Because I could have guessed it would be access to finance. You know, when we started this research surveys, when we went into the field, we thought, you know, this would come out. You know, it would be all about poverty, about prosperity. It will be about the income, you know, that really concerned the small farmers, but it was not the case. The concern was in the balance with nature, by far. And this was for us also the news that we really got out of this. It was a new insight. We knew it was important to farmers, but we didn't know that it was so important to farmers. So actually the right answer is the resilience to the shocks in climate change. You know, the quality of the soil, the access to water. That was farmers' most concern. When we go to the next slide, we can look a little bit more into the outcomes. Well, I do not expect you can read it immediately, but it gives you the outcomes, and what you can see on top of this slide deck are the outcomes for each commodity. So what you see here is for banana, the perception on on prosperity, balance with nature, inclusivity it's not that good. The concerns are quite high. But when you look at, well, let's say, cotton farmers, it's quite positive on prosperity, quite positive on inclusivity, but not that positive on balance with nature. And when you look at those categories below, and you look at the balance of nature to nature category, which is actually the fourth line in this slide, it's all negative. That means that the biggest concern is in that area. Will farmers still have access to the natural resources that they really need? It's the top of their mind. It's the top concern that they have. I have to tell you here that it is a perception-based research, and it's important for you guys to know because it always has a bias in it. Always, we know that, and it is difficult to compare. You cannot say a cocoa farmer is less positive than a cotton farmer. It's you know, comparing apples with pears, and even within a commodity between the several countries. And I think, yeah, in palm, there's a good example. You see, for example, in palm that farmers in Malaysia are quite positive, but the farmers in Ghana are quite negative. So even there you see differences, and it's not always easy to compare because the farming systems are sometimes totally different. And also the support that is provided by the government to those farmers might be different as well. So it's bias. But the methodology that we chose was a methodology that was endorsed by the Maastricht University, which is a quite renowned university in the Netherlands. So the methodology is fine, the sampling is fine, the whole statistical analysis is fine, and the only thing that we need to be careful of is you know, getting quick conclusions out of this. But the overall picture, you could say, is that yeah, there are some positives in countries for specific commodities, but there are also truly negatives. And one thing comes out very clearly: balance with nature is clearly one of the biggest concerns for all farmers. Now here we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is an interesting thing because you know, when you source products from smallholders, we're always keen that a smallholder benefits from it. Because when a small farmer really has a sound business case and earns enough income for his family, and yeah, then there is no need to go cut down the forest and expand the farm business because it's delivering sufficient money. So we cannot just simply say let's stop deforestation without looking at the poverty problem. And I think that is an important message I would like to bring across also in the discussion later on in the panel. Then into my last slide is a slide where I would like to show you a little bit of the website, and then I will end the meeting, or well, not the meeting, and my presentation, of course, because the website is very interesting for you to take a look at. So if you can scroll a little bit down, you will see a very concise summary of the report. Actually, you can download the report, you can click on the countries and see the results. You will see the key findings, the meters. You can select your own meter, global, Africa, or all kind of commodities. And we will tell a little bit more about, you know, what is the definition of this farmer. So how did we look at that? And we dive a little bit more into the details of this small farmer atlas. But it also has a data portal. So if you go to the data portal in the menu, you can actually sign up because we're very transparent. We are happy to share the data. We make sure that data is not personalized. Of course, you won't see any names, or you can't bring back the data to the original source. But if you want to explore a little bit more about the data, I invite you to sign up and excuse me, and explore it. Now we can go to the commodity page, please. excuse me. Here, just for, as an example, coffee, we have 8 commodity pages, but for coffee, it looks like this. We explain a little bit, you know, what are the pressing issues in the coffee sector. You can download the atlas again. But we also give you the results specifically for coffee. Results on the prosperity kind of things, on the inclusivity, but also on the balance of nature, as you can see here. You can dive a little bit more into the details of specific questions, but we also explain how the supply chain works in coffee for those who have less understanding how the situation is for the coffee farmers. We have a couple of questions with remarkable answers that you can take a look at. And if you scroll on top of it, you can go back to the website and then go back to the presentation, I think. But I truly invite you to go to the website and explore it a little bit more. Thank you very much for listening in to me. Probably I took too much time, Greta. I always do that, but I'm so interested and enthusiastic about the topic. But the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much, Friedrich. That was super interesting. And if you have any further questions, I invite you to put them in the chat for Friedrich to answer. So now I'm keeping the panel discussion. Here we will have 2 representatives from smallholders. So one is from Peru and the other one is from Honduras. We have then 2 representatives from the private sector, Lorenza Garra, Vice President Sustainability at JDE Peats, and Nicolas Leguer, Global Responsibility Sourcing Manager, Coffee from LDC, Louis Dreyfus. As well as I hope Mr. Michael Amoa, Deputy Director from the Research and Development Department at the Ghana Cocoa Board was able to join. We will check later. But now I would like to give the floor to the moderator, Gert van der Biel, who is the Senior EU Policy Advisor from Solidaridad. Gert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Greta, and thank you, Frederick, for setting the scene and also introducing the topic of the European Deforestation Regulation. My name is Gert van der Bijl. I work at the Netherlands or Europe Office of Solidaridad. Have been working for the past 3 years on the EU Deforestation Regulation. The first 2 years basically with European institutions to try to influence the policy and make it more inclusive for smallholders, and now working with actors across the globe, both in the private sector and also my colleagues in many countries, to ensure that the EUDR is really working out positively for smallholders. And that last thing is exactly the theme that I want to touch upon in the next 40 minutes. We will start, as Greta said, with 2 farmers, and I really want to give them the floor first to set the scene, and then we'll ask Laurent and Nicolas to give their perspective from the private sector. And I want to make sure that we end with the 2 farmers and give them the last word. And I think that is also combining well with the message that Frederick shared on the Small Farm Atlas, that it's important to give the floor to smallholders. So we will start with Gilberto Rodriguez, cocoa farmer from Peru, and with Rosa Angelica Paz from Honduras. I think it's important for you all to realize that they will speak in Spanish. So there is a translation available so that you can listen to the simultaneous translation in English. And I first want to ask Gilberto Rodriguez to briefly introduce himself and explain what his organization Acopagro, working in cocoa in Peru, is doing, and at what his overall feeling is about EUDR. So Gilberto, could you briefly introduce yourself and set the scene here?
Hola. Mi nombre es Segundo Gilberto Rodríguez Ortiz. Soy un agricultor peruano. Tengo mi parcela que tiene sembríos diversificados. Tiene sembríos de cacao, cocos, árboles maderables. Tiene un bosque para la conservación del medio ambiente. Y está ubicado en el distrito de Guayaga Ledoy, en la provincia de Bellavista, departamento de San Martín, Perú. Y hoy estoy acá para conversar, dialogar en representación de los 400.000 agricultores que están día a día en los quehaceres de nuestra sufrida agricultura. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Gilberto. Then the floor to Rosa Angelica Paz from Honduras to introduce herself and her organization working in coffee in Honduras.
Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Rosa Angélica Paz, soy tercera generación de productores de café. Actualmente estoy en representación de Cooperativa Capucas, una cooperativa de pequeños productores que está ubicada en la zona suroccidente de Honduras. Es una organización pues, que incentiva la producción de cafés especiales y a la diversificación también de cultivos. Actualmente con más de 12 certificaciones de calidad acreditadas. Y bueno, es un gusto poder estar aquí compartiendo con ustedes y poder expresar cuál es nuestra opinión acerca de la regulación europea desde el punto de vista del productor y como organización. Muchas gracias.
Okay, thanks to both of us, and I'm very delighted they are able to join. Also, considering the large time difference, so it's very early in both countries. And I want to continue with Gilberto. Gilberto, if you can briefly explain from your experience what you feel is needed to really make the European deforestation regulation work out in a positive way for farmers and specifically cocoa farmers in Peru. What would the most important things be that you want to highlight? What is important to make it work for smallholder farmers, and how can it be something that works out positively?
Bueno, nosotros como agricultores acá en el Perú, nos sentimos contentos de la norma europea que se ha dado, ¿no? ¿Por qué razón? Porque nosotros mediante esta norma vamos a ir perfeccionando quizás en todos los aspectos, en los aspectos sociales, económicos y ambientales, los agricultores. Porque la verdad, las organizaciones que ya están organizadas, ellos sí tienen la gran facilidad de irse desarrollando más rápido, pero los agricultores que todavía no están organizados van a tener problemas más adelante porque a ellos todavía hay que encaminarles para que puedan cumplir las normas europeas. Nosotros estamos ya a cargo de una cooperativa y esta cooperativa ya está avanzando en un 50-60% las normas y nosotros como cooperativa queremos ser los primeros en cumplir las normas. Pero ahora la preocupación viene con los agricultores que no están organizados. Ellos van a tener problemas más adelante en los aspectos sociales, económicos, si no se les brinda el apoyo necesario, porque tiene un costo hacer los polígonos, titulaciones de las tierras y en todos los aspectos, organizar a los agricultores demanda de elevados costos. Entonces, ahí va a haber una diferencia entre un agricultor organizado y un agricultor que no está organizado. Y tenemos un riesgo de que el agricultor que no está organizado, si no le damos el soporte necesario, tenemos un riesgo de que este agricultor vuelva nuevamente a los sembríos de coca. Gracias.
Okay, thank you, Gilberto, for indeed both explaining what you see as opportunities, but also as risk, and also adding some things that you feel that can or should be done to avoid that risk. Angelica, looking from your perspective in the coffee farming in Honduras, what would you like to add from your perspective here?
Bueno, principalmente yo creo que es muy importante resaltar la categoría de productores que tenemos y cómo se están adaptando a este nuevo proceso. Número uno, la categoría de productores que son innovadores, que siempre están dispuestos al cambio. Número dos, los que se están introduciendo. Y número tres, los que no quieren hacer nada. Pero ahora bien, ¿cuál es la importancia o qué deberíamos de abordar? Considero yo que necesitamos los pequeños productores. Número uno, el fortalecimiento de los conocimientos basados en el nuevo reglamento, porque muchas veces algunos no se introducen o no quieren formar parte del proceso porque no conocen acerca del reglamento, cuáles van a ser los beneficios. Si bien es cierto, hemos venido trabajando bajo pues normas de certificación que nos han o nos requieren trabajar esta parte ambiental, social, pero es muy necesario formar acerca de esto. Luego de tener esa formación, pues el fortalecimiento en tema de incentivos para poder apalancar las pequeñas inversiones o modificaciones que se deben hacer en campo. Y luego, pues el monitoreo, seguimiento de que se esté implementando, que se esté haciendo un buen uso de los recursos. Y sobre todo, pues el poder tener esos mercados que sean accesibles. Y si estamos haciendo un trabajo atrás de inversión por querer formar parte, seguir formando parte de este gran mercado, que es uno de los mercados más importantes en la producción de café, entonces, desde mi punto de vista, eso es lo que necesitamos, ¿verdad? Para poder seguir trabajando, incorporándonos y pues seguir produciendo café de calidad y poderlo seguir introduciendo en este mercado europeo. Gracias.
Thank you also, Angelica, and I think also thank you for sketching the differences between farmers, and I think it's important to realize that smallholders is not just one category, but there are differences between them, like there are differences between all human beings. Before I go to Laurent and Nicolas, one last question for both of you. In Europe, there is a lot of discussion about EUDR, and I think there are almost webinars every day where we can participate. But how much is it being discussed, and how much do people know at all about it in the coffee sector in Honduras or in the cocoa sector in Peru? Gilberto. Roberto, my question was to you. How much do people in the cocoa sector in Peru know about EUDR, and how much is it being discussed?
¿Me podrías repetir la pregunta en español?
Oh, apparently there's something wrong with the translation. Okay, yeah. So the question is, how much do people in the cocoa sector in Peru know at all about the European deforestation regulation, and how much is it being discussed?
I can help with the translation if you want.
Okay, please do, yeah.
Alberto, buenos días. Él está preguntando qué tanto los productores de cacao en Perú realmente saben, conocen de esa política de la Unión Europea y qué tanto ellos están en conversas sobre esa política.
Sí, nosotros estamos trabajando arduamente en este aspecto de las normas europeas, porque ahorita estamos organizando mesas técnicas, estamos reuniendo a los agricultores para que ellos se vayan metiendo en la cabeza lo que es las normas europeas, ¿no? Por eso siempre nosotros decimos que las normas europeas va a ser un poco fastidioso para inyectarle al agricultor, porque el agricultor ha estado trabajando mediante certificaciones, pero no ha estado con estas normas de cero deforestación. Con las normas de cero deforestación, el agricultor va a tener que hacer un esfuerzo, y aquí se dice que hay agricultores emprendedores, pero los mismos emprendedores, si no tienen el soporte necesario, no van a llegar a cumplir todas estas normas. Nosotros como cooperativa ya hemos avanzado en un 60% y están con polígonos, con cero deforestación, trazabilidad, todas esas cosas, pero ahora nosotros queremos trabajar ya con los agricultores que no están organizados, porque va a ser un problema de que una cooperativa que está bien organizado cumpla las normas. ¿Y qué va a pasar con los agricultores que no están organizados? Vamos a tener problemas porque el agricultor que no está organizado va a tener muchas dificultades para vender sus productos, y el agricultor que ya está organizado va a tener grandes facilidades para vender sus productos. No es una cosa que se puede manejarle tan fácilmente, por eso nosotros siempre estamos viendo de que en los polígonos estamos referenciando los bosques, pero al agricultor, ¿cómo se le va a subsidiar para que él no siga destruyendo esos bosques? No tan solo por ser un socio de una organización, él lo va a poder cuidar, porque ahorita hay grandes problemas de grandes empresarios que vienen, te ofrecen dinero por los bosques, te alquilan los bosques y todo se va destruyendo. Por eso nosotros estamos viendo que habría que trabajar bastante en lo que es la parte de organización. Y ahora, el acceso.
Thank you, Gilberto, and I will ask Laura and Nicola to react on that later. But first, Angelica, can you briefly say how much EUDR is known and discussed in Honduras?
Bueno, se está hablando bastante, muchísimo, diría. En vista que hay muchos aliados estratégicos, uno de ellos pues Solidaridad, que están involucrando, tratando de llevar bastante esa información, y otros organismos también que tienen que ver con la Unión Europea, y se está introduciendo mucho el tema de este reglamento. E incluso ha despertado el interés de muchos productores también, porque se encuentran en la preocupación: ya no voy a poder comercializar mi café, pero están con el interés de poder adquirir más conocimiento para poder introducirse y poderse mantener en el mercado.
Okay, well, thank you, Angelica, and good to hear that at least the concern is there and that people are looking into it. I want to then move to Nicola, and I'm not sure I pronounced your second name right, Legay, but more or less, to first briefly introduce yourself and maybe then add a bit about your company, Louis Dreyfus, and explain what it is that you as company are doing on EUDR. And especially also, I want to ask you already to react a bit on what Gilberto and Angelica's concern were about inclusion and what needs to be done and what you can do or will do to make sure that EUDR will be really inclusive and not only profit the well-organized farmers.
Sure. Can you hear me well?
Very well.
Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to be with you today. So as presented in the introduction, I'm Nicolas Léger. That's the right way of pronouncing it. I'm French. I work for LDC. I've been with LDC for the last 2 years as Global Responsible Sourcing Manager Coffee, so as part of the sustainability team globally. LDC is probably known by most of you, is a large company founded more than 170 years ago, which became one of the largest merchants of agri-commodities globally. So we do coffee as well. Coffee is one of our products, of course, but we do also a wide array of other commodities like grains, oilseeds, cotton, sugar, juices. And we play different roles. Of course, we purchase and we sell, but we also have some industrial and logistics activities. Between producing countries and markets. Very quickly, I would like to say on EUDR that as LDC and personally, I see EUDR and I think it will resonate with what has been commented already. It's a bit contradiction, but we see this as both a blessing and a curse. Maybe very few will agree on the former, on the blessing, but I think there is a consensus to say that even though there is a lot to worry and complain about the way it has been framed, but overall I think there is consensus on the vision and the purpose of the legislation, because finally we look at how to efficiently halt deforestation in commodity production. As we know, it's one of the main drivers of climate change and loss of biodiversity globally. And in the introduction made by Solidaridad, I think it resonates with what was mentioned about the need for farmers, the main concern about balance with nature. I think they will be the first beneficiaries, even though it's not that evident. From a starting point, I think it's obvious that they will be the main beneficiaries of conserving the forest globally. Of course, it's also my curse may be a bit dramatic, and I think we in our position as LDC, we are not globally overly pessimistic about the regulation. We are well aware of all the concerns, the constraints that it poses. One of them, and I think it's about timing and resources. We are clear that time is very short to implement all the things that have to be implemented. Lack of resources, as rightly pointed out in the introduction, lack of resources, especially at farmer level, to achieve compliance, to develop the systems, the tools, the controls, collect data to achieve compliance in such a limited time window and with so limited resources made available to them. But as a company, that's why we are really committed to support the farmers to make sure that they are not left on the sidelines of the regulation. And I fully agree with what Gilberto rightly pointed out a couple of times. I think we need also to look at the unorganized farmers, which are probably and certainly the most vulnerable part of commodity supply chain, and especially in coffee, there's, well, depending on the countries, there are a wide share of the farmers which are unorganized, and there's a risk that they might be left on the sidelines. What we'll see in many producing countries is that the level of awareness is still very low among the farmers and among the suppliers, and there's a lot to do to engage them and onboard them on the EUDR in a very short period of time. So if I may comment very quickly on what we address and how we try to make this more inclusive. Yeah.
Sorry, just sorry to interrupt. Just Laurent from JDE needs to leave in 5 minutes. So
yeah. Thank
if
you,
we
Greta.
can,
so maybe it indeed good to change.
No problem.
Yeah.
I apologize. Thank you.
Pause here and come back later.
My apologies for not thinking about that. Laurent, you need to leave earlier, so please take over indeed. Present your role in JDE Peat and focus indeed on what you really think is needed and what JDE Peat and others can or should do to make sure EUDR is smallholder inclusive.
Yeah, thank you, Hert. And sorry, Nicola, for jumping, but I have to leave at 3 o'clock. I have a hard stop. Just for the people, JDE Peat is the second largest coffee company in the world. We buy 8% of the world coffee. And within JDE Peat, I'm the head of sustainability for the group. I will jump directly on the inclusive part because for us, it's important. Climate change, as Nicola said, is a huge risk on the coffee sector. If we don't stop climate change, we will have no more coffee in the future, and that's why this regulation is so critical. The part where I'm sitting in meeting every day about the EUDR, and the part that everybody forget to talk about is how do we stop deforestation? We talk about traceability, we talk about a lot of things. And today, if you think about traceability, by definition, traceability means exclusion. You pick the one which are okay, you leave the other side. And there is a huge risk that if we focus purely on strict traceability, all we're going to do is exclude smallholder because they will not be ready in time. The way we looked at it in JDE Peat is the other way around. What we invested millions in the past 12 months is actually be able to identify where are those deforested coffee plots. And we've just completed now 90% of the world coffee is covered, including Honduras, by the way, and other countries. And it means today we're able to identify exactly where are those plots of coffee which have been deforested after 2020 and replanted with coffee. And what we are now offering to the countries for free, so they're not talking about cost, no nothing, is we can give those information to the countries. I was talking to Honduras yesterday, so that then the government can address it. And why we're taking this way? Because today there is hardly any deforested coffee in the world. In Honduras, leveraging high-resolution imagery and ground truthing, we found less than 50 small plots of coffee deforested. We talk about less than 20 hectares for the whole country. And if we manage to actually remove those plots and reforest them, it means that whole of Honduras becomes deforestation-free. And it means that then it becomes inclusive, meaning that there is no more exclusion, because the EU has opened a huge gate and a huge opportunity for us through the declaration in excess. And what does it mean is if we make the country deforestation free by removing the very, very few cases of deforestation, what we now offer for free to all the countries in the world, we can make the whole country compliant. And the beauty of the AI that we've developed and that we also open to everybody is that it generates the polygon automatically. You don't have to generate your polygons. You don't have to worry about updating them. And we can make a single due diligence certificate for the country. And it means that literally by addressing the root cause of the problem and by stopping deforestation, we can make the whole country compliant. And then we can focus on what is important is supporting farmers. Because as you mentioned, the driver of deforestation is mostly poverty, and this is where the investment should go, in supporting poverty through multiple initiatives like what we do also with Solidaridad in different projects. Because if we support farmers, we'll avoid future deforestation. That's why we should put the investment here and not in all set of complicated process and so on. And that's what JDE Peat has been doing. We're now engaging with literally all the governments in the world, because we have a solution that is inclusive, that is protecting the business, because don't forget, we have to pay the bills if there is a fine. And for a company like us, it's 300 million euro. And then we have also developed a solution that delivers on the ambition of the regulation, meaning stopping deforestation. And that's what now we're engaging with all the government, and happy to take more time with some of you if you're interested to explain that. But we have a huge opportunity to actually stop coffee-related deforestation today and make sure that there's nobody excluded and that we support the planet, the people, and also the business at the end of the day. So that's where we are, and that's where we've been putting all our energy now in the past 12 months to actually support the industry and find a solution that is inclusive.
Thank you, Laurent, and also thank you for mentioning the importance of also looking at poverty as one of the root causes. And if I can add one question to you, and who would you need to make this work? And also looking at Nicholas, how are traders involved here? Because in the end, they are the ones that buy the coffee, is it?
For us, the first one which are critical are the local governments, because at the end they have also a responsibility in part, and that's why we're engaging with Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, because they are key for us in our approach to be able to stop deforestation, because it's not a trader nor JDP that can stop deforestation. We can find it, we can help them to address it, we can support financially in some shape or form, but at the end, government and local authorities, and also, I would say, to an extent, cooperatives, are the ones who need to address the problem itself. So for us, the role of government is critical. If there's no local appetite to fix it, we will not succeed.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Nicholas, if you hear this, how does that sound to you? And what role do you see for a trader like LDC here?
Well, as LDC, we're really committed to make this more inclusive. And as I was saying before Laurent jumped in, is we are committed to make it inclusive and do not leave the farmers on the sidelines. I fully second what Laurent says. I like, because we regularly meet with Laurent in several events, and I think we are quite complementary. I hope that at some point the European Union, the European Commission will hear and align on that vision of making this business work for all, and especially in the first place for the farmers, instead of making it very complicated, burdensome, resource intensive. But I think we need to balance what we need short term and what could be an ideal solution medium to long term, even though I think that solution that Laurent is proposing could be made quickly achievable. But yeah, it's a slow process, and also when you hear from the European Commission, it takes time before things evolve. So what we do short term on our side, because we know we cannot just wait and then let's say they bend the regulation in another way. We work directly with the farmers to include them with different. We have different programs to do so. We have, of course, we work with the usual third-party certifications like Rainforest Alliance, FORSI, Fairtrade, and others. We have also developed our own responsible sourcing program, which is equivalent to another certification, whereby we support the farmer and we target especially unorganized farmers, because as it's been pointed out, they are very vulnerable. They don't have access to information. They don't have the resources to achieve compliance. So we organize the farmers, we collect all the data, we verify compliance, and we implement corrective actions where needed. And we will be the one facilitating all this process, transferring, sharing the information with the rest of the supply chain, and making sure that those farmers will continue to sell coffee to LDC, of course, and to have access to the European market. But we know that coffee is a very competitive market, and not all the companies in Europe are willing or can afford to work with certification schemes. So that's why we are also working on another responsible sourcing program that we call RSP Core Plus, which is it's quite similar, that we work with our suppliers. We map extensively all their supply network. So we go to the farms, we map the farms, we collect the geolocation data, the polygons where needed. We check if it's deforestation. We collect also other complementary data to verify other risks. So by doing this, by assuming that cost also, we make sure that those farmers can continue to sell, and then they maintain their access to the market. And for them, it's basically no investment, but through that, they can continue to export to the EU.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicolas. And unfortunately, Laurent had to leave. I want to echo what Greta already said in the chat box. If there are questions for Laurent, do also share them in the chat box, and we can ask Laurent after the meeting to respond to them. I saw one question about polygons and how that works with Laurent's system, or the system that he promotes. I think it's important to add here that this system, which is called Declaration in Excess, also it has a formal approval from the European Commission, but it still requires the availability of polygons. So what the system entails is that for all products that are being offered on the market from a certain region, you add all polygons from all producers there. What it avoids is that you need to trace it. So the traceability part is taken out, but the polygons still need to be there. But I'm sure that Laurent can explain more if there are questions. And also for the last part, if there are questions either to Nicola or Gilberto or Rosa Angelica, do not hesitate to share them in the chat box so that we can give you the floor to come up with your questions. And one question I still have, Nicola, I do not hear you mentioning, well, you did mention it briefly, but one thing that Laura also highlighted is the importance of poverty and ensuring poverty reduction and ensuring coffee farmers do reach a decent income. How would you respond to that, and how do you see your responsibility there?
No, I think that's clear. That's one at the core of this conundrum is that, of course, while we cannot secure a decent income from the farmer, it's hard to expect them to protect nature, to protect the forests. So this is why also we are working on the one hand side on compliance, because this is basically EUDR is an exercise of risk management and compliance, even though I think there's a missed opportunity also to look more at impact, and I think we agree on that with Laurent. But there is definitely a compliance side. But on the other hand, what we do with the farmers, of course, beyond compliance, we work on programs. We have an initiative that is called Stronger Coffee Initiative. So we the same group of farmers we source from, we are going to implement some projects related to farmer prosperity, regenerative agriculture, low carbon coffee, because we know that we cannot expect full compliance and ask all the time more and more regulation if we don't support the farmers to improve their income. And there is different ways to do that. And that we are ramping up this program with them, and we hope we can reach more farmers and make it more inclusive.
Okay, I definitely want to support that, Nicola. I'm happy to see that Miguel Eko Amoa also joined from CocoBot in Ghana. Definitely an institute that is very much concerned about income of farmers and also living income from cocoa farmers. So I'm really happy to give you the floor, Miguel, to explain what CocoBot is doing at the moment to ensure that the EUDR will work out positively in Ghana.
Thank you so much. Ghana Cocoa Board, being the regulator or the main unit agency that manages Ghana cocoa industry, decided that we don't want to exclude any farmer in the system. We want every farmer cocoa to be sold. So we decided to embark on a national system, i.e., we decided to have a national traceability system, which we call Ghana Cocoa Traceability System. We have mapped all cocoa polygons with 2 polygons. We physically measured them with 2 surveyors to measure the polygons of all cocoa farms in Ghana. And we have developed a software for the traceability system, taking into account all the chain of custody from the farmer up to the pot. So we have established a national traceability that will enable us to trace cocoa from the pot to the plot of land under the guiding principle of tracing 1 step backwards and tracking 1 step forward. We have also gone ahead in collaboration with the European Forest Institute, to develop the cocoa-related deforestation risk model to be able to meet the legality aspect of EUDR, and the deforestation aspect as per the FAO definition. We have also, in collaboration with ICI, developed the child labor risk assessment model to be able to meet the legality aspect of EUDR. Our approach is that for each parcel of cocoa that we sell, it will come with all the mandatory data requirements, i.e. Article 9, Article 10, Article 11. So all that what we are doing, we are providing a service to the operator and trader. And we are making the Ghana's cocoa competitive in terms of compliance with EUDR. So you buy our cocoa, you have all the information to fill your due diligence statement. I must say it comes with a fee because we invested, we need to recover the investment and also maintain the system because they are recurrent investment as well. So we did all this inclusively. In other words, we did a lot of consultation. We didn't start from ground zero. We looked at the private traceability system available. We had an engagement with them and we took the best out of it. We looked at the deforestation risk model available within Ghana by the private sector, took the best out of it, and we continue to engage as we move along. As we speak now, we have the traceability system established. We are now operationalizing it in phases. We are collaborating with GIZ under the EU support to pilot in Asim Fosu and Asim Breku, 2 districts out of 70 districts in Ghana. Cocoa Board Management has also given us money to start piloting in New Adubiase. As we speak, we've been able to transport 80 bags of cocoa under the system to the port. You may think the 80 bag is not enough. It's because the cocoa wasn't available. The season is tailing off. So we didn't have enough cocoa, but we've been successfully able to test it and send 80 bags of cocoa to the port. We are still going on with the process. So that is it. We have taken the burden from the farmer. We want to lessen the burden on the farmer and also make our country attractive or competitive in terms of compliance with EUDR. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Michal, and definitely a huge and I think very important job that you are doing in Ghana to serve farmers there. If I would ask you, what do you think that is really key to make it actually work for all farmers? What would be your answer? Would that be a role for the private sector, or what is really the most important, let's say, issue that you see ahead to really make this work?
For me, the key thing has been sensitization, education. It's change management. It's something new. The most critical point is for the farmer to understand how to segregate cocoa from different plots of land. How important for the PCs or the first chain of custody, which is the purchasing clerk in our system, how he handles the cocoa. If you don't get it right, the whole system, garbage in, garbage out. So we have invested a lot in sensitization. Why the need for the farmer to segregate cocoa from different plots. So for me, that is the key. And for me, that is the answer. And also engagement, consensus builder. You need to engage your stakeholders. They are going to bear the brunt if the data goes and it fails. So you need to engage them, listen to them, where they have challenges with the system you're developing. You need to tweak it, look at it together to find solution. I recall we had a section with a number of the brands. They raised a number of issues. Some of them, we didn't have solution ourselves. We all came out with a solution. We went to the field to test it, and they are working. So 2 things, sensitization, communication, and engagement of your stakeholders are the key issues here.
Okay, thank you. A question to the audience. If there are things you want to ask, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hands. So do not hesitate to come forward if you want to ask something or share something. And as I don't see hands raised, and I don't see. Wow, there's one question in the chat that I would like to ask Michael and also Nicola, and I will ask the farmers later. Is there a risk that this EUDR would lead to probably less deforestation for the commodities involved, but that farmers will deforest for other commodities and that in the end it will have little impact? How do you see that? I see you smiling, Michael.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's a question that has been bothering my mind. Yeah. Back in Ghana here, we are losing a lot of land to rubber and palm oil. So if rubber is not part, or palm oil, I know palm oil is not part, soya is part.
Yeah, then, rubber and palm oil are part.
Okay.
If it's exported to Europe. I think, yeah.
But if it doesn't go to Europe, then you lose those land, and those land are not within the jurisdiction of cocoa, and therefore may have the likelihood of not meeting or the probability of not meeting the requirement of EUDR. So that is a big risk. Once it doesn't cover all commodities, and some commodities are left out, and you are competing here. Another one is cashew. We are competing with cashew for land. So if lands are taken over, cocoa lands are taken over by cashew, then there's a high risk that those areas can be involved in deforestation.
Yeah. Nicola, if I ask you to further respond on that one.
No, I think there is definitely a risk. And I think this is basically because the way the regulation is framed, we are more about the stick than the carrot. And instead of thinking of a more, let's say, comprehensive, inclusive approach, the risk is that we just move the problem and look away. So there will be some supply chain that will be compliant and others that won't be compliant. The coffee that is not compliant will go to other continents, other markets, because Europe is not 100% of the coffee market, or the coffee the producer will deforest for other crops, as you rightly pointed out. This is something it's hard to predict, to be honest, at this point. But I think that the regulation as is may not dramatically reduce deforestation, because there will be some way to circumvent, there will be some ways to doing other crops to avoid that falling under that regulation. So I think there is a missed opportunity to generate something more global and more impactful. Yeah.
I see a question from James Acosta. Maybe James, you can take the floor and ask the question to Michael Amoa. Is that possible?
Yeah, hello, Michael.
Yeah, I do hear you, James, so go ahead.
Okay, great. Michael, if I heard you correctly, I think you mentioned that all cocoa farms in Ghana have been mapped and you have the polygons. And then at some point, you stated that one of the main issues is segregation by farmers. So I'm wondering, is it that even though all farms have been mapped, not all farmers, and for that case, not beans coming from all farms, meet the requirements for EUDR, for which some have to be segregated and be accounted for in the system?
Thank you for the question. And the key thing is that for EUDR, it's case by case basis. You need risk assessment for each geolocation. So once the cocoa is mixed, it's difficult for you to make attribution to each geolocation. So it's important that the cocoa is segregated right from the farmer level. So that is the issue. We are supposed to provide the geolocation of the product, the plots that produce the cocoa in the bag. At the same time, provide a risk assessment of the plots or for the geolocation. So if they miss it, you cannot do the attribution.
Okay.
That is the reason.
Okay. So it's more like identity preserved to a particular...
Sure. Okay, here we are preserving the geolocation.
All right.
Of the geolocation.
Okay. That is clear. Thank you so much.
If I can add on that, Michael, and also building on what Laurent Sagara from JDE Peats indicated, that they want to set up, or are setting up a system for coffee to ensure that the whole region is deforestation free. That avoids that you need to segregate. I think Ghana exports maybe 50% of the cocoa to Europe. Wouldn't it be a suggestion to have one system, and regardless if it's going to Europe or to any other country, to avoid this segregation, or would that be too costly?
Well, for us, the system we have done is one. It covers all cocoa farms. But the challenge is that with the EUDR, you must link the assessment with the geolocation. So no matter what, you have to do the segregation. The geolocation must go with the risk assessment. Because of that, you are forced to do the segregation. Other than that, you can't do the attribution. So that is where the challenge is. Our system covers all cocoa farm, and we'll keep updating. We have a system on the ground that keeps updating the data as and when the changes hands or there are divisions. In our country, sometimes the farms are divided among family members. We have system to be doing all those updates. So that is why the segregation is important.
Yeah, thank you. I see a question from Monirot Chuon for Michael. Maybe Monirot, can you take the floor and explain to Michael what it is you want to know?
Good evening from part of Asia. I hope everyone can hear me. Thanks, Michael. In here, we are dealing with the similar challenge for cashew with deforestation, and I would like to understand, with the work you've done into mapping your cocoa farm, are you able to command additional price, higher premium from buyers, given the fact that you've done a lot of the things to prepare your farmers and all the things you've done to build the system on behalf of your farmer and actually to help the buyer as well for them to comply?
Well, we look at it in terms of EUDR, it becomes a market requirement. But we are supporting the farmer with a system to leverage on it to do traceability. So you don't need to take polygons on farms again. You can take it as a source of truth, single truth, get an interoperable platform to do your certification program. So you are minimized cost there, and you have earned more as a farmer. The other thing we are looking at is that with this system in place, we are going to explore how the farmers can take advantage of it to assess the voluntary carbon markets. With the system, once we are piloted it under the Ghana Cocoa Well Plus Forest Program, it was successful. We got some payment for some farmers. We want to scale it up so that all farmers can take advantage of the system to do that. We believe with the sustainability system, it has brought visibility in the cocoa sector, and that will improve the access to finance, because now the farmer has an address, the farmer has an ID. It makes credit assessment easy. It makes it attractive to the financial sector. So we want to take advantage of it and support the farmers to use leverage on it to improve on their farming activity and their income.
Thank you, Michael. And indeed, I think very important to highlight the potential of using what is required on EUDR for a broader sustainability agenda. And I think it's very important to look at it from that perspective. I see Nicolas has raised his hand. Nicolas.
Yes, I wanted just to quickly comment on traceability, because I think part of the last discussion revolved a lot around traceability. While I fully, and we are quite supportive of the approach presented by Laurent, because it would make our life much easier for sure. But let's not forget that the EUDR is not only about deforestation. We focus very much on deforestation today, but it also requires some compliance with national legislation, which also requires some level of traceability, because how can we evidence compliance with national legislation if we cannot say from which farmers, except if we can. There's a way also to prove that all the farmers in a given jurisdiction are compliant with the legislation. which might be there might be some ways, but let's not forget that the way it is phrased today, because of deforestation and compliance with national legislation, there is for sure some need for traceability and segregation, as Michael rightly pointed out. So I think we cannot get rid of the traceability requirement. And we hope the EU that will also provide more clarity on this legal compliance, because it's still very vague. There is no guidance, and it depends how you interpret that. It can be very, very demanding, or there is maybe different ways to look at it. But yeah, that's what I wanted to add also.
Yeah, well. I think that's an important addition, Nicolas. And if Laurent would still be there, he would be able to explain indeed that what he is suggesting is a way to solve the issues around geolocations and traceability, but that it indeed will definitely also require additional attention and additional work to make sure that farmers are indeed compliant with the legislation that are mentioned in the EUDR. So that part is also indeed important to highlight. Looking at time, because we want to end at in 6 minutes from now, and I want to be sure that the final words will be for Angelica and Gilberto. I see one question that I want to first ask them to look into. The question is, where did you find resources, funds, technical assistance to prepare your work on polygons, etc.? Were you supported by the government or NGOs or companies? And what support is still needed for you and others? So maybe, Angelica, could you explain a bit more on where your funding and support comes from to work on EUDR? Is that from NGOs? Does the local government support you there? Companies? Is that something that you can explain?
Bueno, ha sido un tema totalmente de gestión. En primer lugar, creo que el interés primordial ha surgido de la Organización para el Productor, entonces se ha trabajado con fondos propios, fondos que se han gestionado a través de ONGs. Uno de los actores claves e importantes que hemos tenido es el proyecto Solidaridad, entre otros aliados estratégicos que hemos tenido. Y bueno, también lo que se ha generado a través de los sellos de calidad acreditados. Entonces se ha distribuido un poco de lo que, de esa prima que queda de los sellos de calidad. Aún se sigue trabajando, es muy necesario el poder seguir pues gestionando este tipo de recursos para poder seguir avanzando. Gracias.
And that's Fair Trade or Rainforest Alliance or several of them? Okay. Yeah.
Sí, de los principales, pues Comercio Justo, Rainforest Alliance, Be Friendly, Naturland, Slow Food y Rock.
Wow, okay.
BioSwish.
Yeah, thank you.
Entre otros.
Yeah. And Gilberto, what did make it possible for you to work on EUDR compliance? Was that the local government, NGOs, companies, and what more do you need to make it really work out well?
Para que este reglamento funcione bien, sería a nivel de las organizaciones que ya están con buena base, ellos ya tienen un soporte de varios aliados, pero vamos a los agricultores que están sueltos, que no están organizados. Ahí sí, la idea es de que nos involucremos todos para que ese agricultor se sienta contento, porque si no, ese agricultor no va a poder desarrollarse. Los organizados se están desarrollando, pero los que no están organizados, ¿qué va a pasar con ellos? Nos tenemos que unir todas las organizaciones, que Comercio Justo, que los mercados, todos, hacer un esfuerzo y dale el soporte a esos agricultores para que ellos puedan desarrollarse. O si no, involucrar, organizarles a ellos con más cooperativas, asociaciones, qué sé yo, pero ¿quién va a hacer eso? Tenemos que unirnos todos y hacer el esfuerzo. Gracias. Gracias.
Oh, okay, Gilberto, I think that's a very clear call, and I would almost say almost final word for this meeting. Angelica, if I would ask you to share us one final word, one observation, one thing that is on your mind about EUDR, what would be the last thing that you wanted to share with us?
Bueno, creo que los cambios siempre son buenos, independientemente en lo que lo apliquemos en nuestra vida. Creo que es una muy buena oportunidad para los productores el poder adaptarse a estas nuevas actividades, a estas nuevas prácticas agrícolas, que si bien es cierto va a ser un beneficio. Pues de eso depende, ¿verdad? Que podamos seguir produciendo café de calidad y asegurar que la cadena del café se mantenga y se continúe de tal forma. Gracias.
Okay, with that, I want to finish this part. I still see questions coming in the meeting chat, and I want to encourage you to further share questions if there are things on your mind, and we will make sure that questions will be answered. I want to thank Nicolas and Laurent, although he's no longer there, and Michael for their presentation and contribution, and also Angelica and Gilberto for opening and closing this session. I want to close this session with what I think both Angelica and Gilberto highlighted, the importance of working together and making sure that we realize what the challenges are, but ensure that EUDR will in the end have a positive impact, and these possibilities are there if we work together. As I said in the beginning, there are a lot of discussions and exchanges taking place, and I think it is important to have these exchanges because cooperation and understanding each other is important here. So that's why I was very happy with this exchange. And I hope to further have an exchange with you all. So please do share questions and please do reach out to us and others if you have things that you want to share or if there are questions that you want to raise. So thank you all for joining here, and I want to give the floor to Greta for the closing of this meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gert, and to all the speakers and to you all for joining this event. Just a reminder that UNDP as the Food and Agricultural Commodity Systems Community, I have posted in the chat the link. We have there a group called the Deforestation-Free Value Chains, where we post the recording resources, and you can also write further questions and reach out to the other members. We will also send you an email after the workshop with the recording and the resources. And I also invite you to take 1 minute to fill out the survey. Also, the link has been posted in the chat. And yeah, with that, I thank you again, all of you, for participating, and looking forward to connect in other events. Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.